Carrie here from Homestead How. Welcome to our homestead. This is a well. This is our homestead well, and in today's video we're going to take that cap off, we're going to pull 100 feet of pipe out, we're going to take the pump out, and we're going to replace it. And we're going to show you how a well works on a homestead. Not just a well, but all of the components it takes to make sure you have pressure in your well, to make sure your well is running efficiently. All of these parts and pieces, we're going to show you that. We're going to pull the well, all in today's episode of Homestead How, so let's get started. So why do we have gallons and gallons of water and buckets everywhere and the dishes are overflowing in the sink? It's because our well pump went out on our homestead yesterday. We've been without water for 24 hours and we're going to try to fix it ourselves in today's episode. So we're going to actually pull our entire well pump out, 100 feet of pipe. We're going to show you all of that, but before we do that, let me show you a couple of the really important components that you need to power your well system and make sure you have adequate pressure. There's lots of little parts and pieces, so we'll show you that, and then we'll pull the well pump out and we'll see if we can get it all sorted and fixed in today's episode. And be sure to watch till the very end, as we do in every episode of Homestead How. At the end, we'll show you some of our favorite photographs on and about our homestead. If you're new to homesteading, or if you moved from the city like we did, we had city water, city pressure. We didn't have all these different components that are required for having a well, and I've learned a lot about them over the last couple of years. This is a pressure tank. What this does is this pressurizes the water. There's a big bladder in there. This fills up with about 30-40 gallons of water, and there's actually just like a bike tire to fill up with air pressure. You can put a pressure gauge on there to see how much pressure's on there, and depending on your unit it'll tell you how much you need, but this is all pressurized to the correct amount. And what happens is the well pump underground pumps water up. There's a check valve so the water can't go back to the pump, which is important. That happens on this is called like a well tee or a manifold. The water comes up from our well under the ground here, it's kind of hard to see, goes into this pressure tank, and this is what gives the house pressure. If you're in the city on city water, you wouldn't need one of these because you'd have pressure coming in right from the pipes coming from the city. As if we didn't have this, and every time you turned on the shower or the sink, the well pump would have to turn on. And that would put a lot of wear and tear on the pump, and it wouldn't give you constant pressure. So this is your pressure tank. The other major component of a system like this is this, and this is your on-off pressure switch. If you're gonna be a homesteader, I would suggest having one of these on backup, which I just purchased. It was 20 bucks. $25 at Menards, and what this does is it regulates the pressure. And you see, you have this sticker on here, it'll tell you exactly what you need. Ours is 20 to 40 psi, and that's what this gauge is, because I got a new 2040 as a backup. This one's still working fine. Actually, I fixed this last year during the pandemic. I was able to clean off some of the contacts and get this working again, but I'm going to replace this as well. And it's good to have a backup for 20 bucks because this can cause you a lot of problems. So this will go from 20 to 40, right now it's at 30. If this goes down to 20, this pressure switch will click and it'll turn on the well pump, and the pump will pump more water into here, and then this will fill up until it gets to 40. This will click again, and then it'll turn the well pump off. It'll stop sending electricity to the well pump. So this is your pressure switch. They sell 30 to 60, 20 to 40, it depends on your setup, so you want to get the correct one. And then in addition to this, those are the major components of your well, is the pressure switch, the pressure tank, and then this, which I have the cover off of right now, this is a control box. This is a well control box, and what this does is a couple things. This sends the electricity to the well pump through these big wires. And it's a lot of electricity, so you have to have a big switch. So you can think of this like a big switch. The other thing that this has going on in it is it has a start capacitor. That's this big round thing up here. It says start capacitor right there. That is because when you start a big, huge electric motor like you have in your pump, it requires a lot of electricity to initially start it up. So this capacitor basically energizes, and it's able to give it a little bit of a boost to get it started up. If you imagine, once you have a big electric motor and it's already running and you got momentum, it requires a lot less electricity to keep it running than it would to start it. So this control box does a couple things. It has the start capacitor to start the well pump up. it detects from the pressure switch when to send the electricity to the well pump. It also has this overload on it, so if you get too much voltage, maybe the pump is bogging down or there's some other issue with the electricity, this will click, and this is like a little circuit breaker. So this is a good place to check if your well pump ever goes out. And then the water itself comes up through that there, and then we have water going out to the house that way, and then water going up to our rental unit that way. And you've got a shut-off switch. Two other things real quick to show you is you have this like little hose set up, and this is just for maintenance. You could hook a hose up to it and get water out of it, but if you wanted to empty the system out, you'd do that here. And then this other thing you may have seen, but you might not know what it is. This is a overpressure valve. It usually says on the side, but mine's kind of rusty and it's dark in here, but it'll say like 75 PSI on it, for example. And if this gets to 75 PSI, or if there's too much pressure in the system, this will open up and it'll let water out. If you didn't have that, and say this thing failed and it didn't turn off at 40 like it's supposed to, and it just kept allowing the electric pump to run, pressure would just keep building up in the system, and it could just explode. So this is kind of a really important safety feature, and you should probably consider changing these every couple of years. They're not very expensive. Sometimes they'll leak, so you want to keep a close eye on them, but they're not too expensive. It'd be a good thing to have an extra one of these around, an extra one of these around, and an extra one of these around. I replaced this gauge 2 years ago, and it's pretty crusty right now. My next big project is to replace a lot of this because they have this steel pipe in here, and I'm going to switch it all out, just have everything in copper. So when our well stopped working, I checked the circuit breaker, the well pump control box, the reset switch, the pressure switch, and all those things checked out, but the well control box kept resetting. So I actually replaced that, and our well worked again for about another week, and then it started failing again. So after ruling out all those other components I just showed you, we realized it was probably the pump itself or the wires going down to the pump. Our pump is 100 feet down in the ground, and it's been in the ground working for 20 years now. We've only lived here for 6 years, but it's been running for 20 years, which is a pretty good run. So it could use a replacement. So we went to Menards, purchased a new well pump. So the name of the channel is Homestead How, Learn With Us. We're always learning and trying to share that with others. Once I got this well cap off, I didn't know what to expect. I actually went in the house and went on my phone and watched a couple of YouTube videos. I saw a bunch of wires hanging there, and then I started thinking, how the heck is the water getting into the house? Obviously it's underground because we're in Wisconsin, so it has to be frozen. And about 6 to 8 feet down, I could see where the pipe went across, but I had no idea how I was supposed to unhook that. I did some research, and that was when I learned about the pitless adapter, which is an adapter that basically slides over an insert and allows the water to go from the pump into the house all underground. And I'm taking this galvanized pipe, which I just happen to have at our homestead, and I needed a 1-inch thread on the end of it to thread into the top of the pitless adapter. You reach this pipe down in there, you screw it in, and then you pull it out. And I found out later that most plumbers have like a T-handle that they use for this. So I'm making my own T-handle in order to pull the pitless adapter out. And once I pull that out, we can start pulling the rest of the pipe out. So after seeing how heavy this thing was, I called in the reinforcements. The girls came out, Grandpa came over to help, and we all started yanking on this thing, and eventually we were able to pull out 100 feet and finally get the well pump itself out. This was pretty heavy though, and this isn't a job for everyone. If you call a plumber, they'll actually come over with a truck and a little crane that they can hook it up to, and it's a lot safer that way and a lot better on your back as well. So with the old well pump out, we cut the old wires off and we removed the fitting connecting the pipe to the pump, and you can see the box for the new well pump there. The main thing that we were trying to focus on at this point was connecting the new pump to the pipe, but mainly connecting the new pump wires and making sure they were 100% waterproof. So we took some extra precautions there. So to connect the wires, we used some waterproof crimp connectors that had shrink wrap on them, and we shrink wrapped those to the wire. Then we had an additional piece of shrink wrap over each wire. Then we used some waterproof like elastic tape on top of that. So we kind of triple protected the wires from the water. With everything nice and secured and waterproofed and the wires all secured down, Putting the pump back in was a lot easier. With gravity on our side, it slid right down. Wasn't too bad at all until we got to the pitless adapter. Luckily you could rest that right there. It's extremely heavy at this point, and we had all sorts of problems trying to seat the pitless adapter back in its spot. It's really heavy, hard to move around, it's a really narrow pipe, and the fitting where it's supposed to seat was really hard to see 6 to 8 feet down. So in just a few hours we were able to get the old pump out, replace the pump, redo the wires, get it all back in there in just a few hours, and then we got stuck on this simple part of sliding this pitless adapter back into its seat. It just didn't want to go in there. It was so heavy to work with, and we struggled for hours and hours. Finally I gave up and I called Country Plumber, company near us, and those guys were great. They came out with the truck and they were able to put sort of a crane deal on the T-handle and go up and down until it was able to seat just perfectly. So with that, we're back up and running with our homestead well. Hopefully it'll last another 20 years. And now here are some of our favorite photos from this week on our homestead. Thanks a lot for watching.